The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
CrossedFlags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Welcome into the latest edition of CrossedFlags. I'm Steve West, joined by Matt Nicholson here. And because we actually don't have a big show coming up this weekend, because Matt and I are going to be on the road to deal with some things that are kind of pressing within the National Motorsports Press Association, we're going to kind of try and deal with a few things here. And what we usually do is we lead off by giving you on the big show a race recap and the schedule, and that's pretty much what we're going to do right here. Let's start off with a race recap, because last weekend Formula E made their only trip into the United States of America, and they were running down in Miami on kind of an abridged version of the Formula One course that runs around Miami's Hard Rock Stadium. And the guy who ended up claiming the win is none other than Mitch Evans for Jaguar, depending on whether you're British or not. We're American. Jaguar. This is notable on a couple of things. We're starting to see where, at least in Formula E, Matt, it doesn't seem to matter as much how well you qualify. Mitch Evans qualified 9th and was able to work his way up through the field. He's not the first person that we've seen be buried middle of the pack this year and work their way to the front. So what does this mean if you were to, and this really is kind of series wide, this could be any series that we're talking about. When you start to see these drivers who we generally see a whole lot of follow the leader, little bit of passing, what does this kind of mean for the future of this series? Is this good or bad?
I think it's a good thing, because it just means there's ways that the quality of racing overall has made improvements.
And that everybody's a little bit tighter? Everybody's a little bit closer?
Yeah. I mean, it just means the quality of racing is improving.
Okay.
Because I would much rather see someone that starts 7th or 8th in a 19-20 car field like Formula E fight their way to the front through traffic and have to slice and dice their way through in tight quarters and do it cleanly, versus somebody start 1st or 2nd and just absolutely go to another zip code and dominate a race.
Yeah, walk off with it, Max Verstappen. This one's also notable because what this did was this broke a tie. And understand that we are still in a situation where this is a very, very, especially compared to all of the other series that we cover on a regular basis, a very, very new series. It's only been going for a little bit more than a decade. Mitch Evans, with this win, breaks a tie with Sebastian Buemi for the most wins all time in the series at 15. Sebastian Buemi is now at 14. So he's all by himself, at least for now. We don't know whether or not this is going to change over the course of time. Heck, it could happen to change next race, truth be told. And that next race is coming up next month. I did see, by the way, that they are actually talking to a couple of different places here in the U.S., including COTA, Denver, Colorado, and a couple of other cities about coming back to the United States next year for not just one race, but maybe doing 2 races once again here in the United States of America. They've done that before. It's been a while since they did it, though. So we'll see whether or not that comes to fruition. There's a short course at COTA, isn't there?
Yeah.
How short is the shortest course at COTA? That becomes the biggest question mark for me.
It's what Cup started running on last year.
That's the shortest course at COTA? That'd be one of the longer courses that Formula E would run then, wouldn't it?
It'd be close, yeah.
All right. We'll see. Time will tell. Again, they're talking to places like Denver, Colorado, and some other cities as well about possibly running there on what would normally be a street course. That's the other situation. I wouldn't mind seeing them on a dedicated road course. You and I have talked about that before. We wouldn't mind seeing them on a dedicated road course, kind of like what they did in Miami. Yeah, they abbreviated the F1 course around Hard Rock Stadium, kind of what they did in Mexico City as well, shortened version of Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. I'd like to see them do more of that as opposed to doing a whole lot of city street courses myself, but that's a personal opinion. Okay, from there, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of NASCAR. As we record this, it is Tuesday afternoon, and that means that we would, under normal circumstances, maybe had given you the results of Monday night's Clash. They didn't run the Clash on Monday night. They postponed it again to tomorrow night as we record this again on a Tuesday. So the Clash becomes a midweek, middle of the week. We don't see that often, but we have seen it in the past. For example, you go back to the stupid COVID, and them running midweek just to try and get a number of races in throughout the course of this. But usually it's a weather delay situation, as this is. They had a bunch of snowfall on Sunday. They weren't able to get the track cleared and raceable by Sunday. And then with the cold temperatures, they were worried that it was all going to freeze again. So they just wanted to get a couple of days in. My question is we're going to get some rain moving through here on a front that's kind of a slow mover. Word is that slow mover is actually going to be affecting the Winston-Salem area tomorrow. Could we see yet another pushback? And if we do, how much further can they legitimately push this back before they just go, you know what, we can't run this year?
I would say probably Thursday would be the cutoff day.
Okay, so they wouldn't do a Friday night thing leading into what we know is Super Bowl weekend.
Very, very doubtful.
Okay. All right. Because I know for certain they wouldn't run it on Sunday. And as far as Saturday is concerned, I guess they could run a Saturday night show. They obviously could run a Friday night show. They do Friday night shows there a lot in Winston-Salem for local races. And those generally sell out very, very well. Why do you say that probably not when it comes to Friday night? I understand this would be a quick turnaround. You're getting a lot of guys that have to rush down to Daytona, but hauler drivers, we've got hauler drivers that could do that. So why is Thursday your cutoff?
Because you got to get back to wherever your team headquarters is, unload all your Clash stuff, and make sure you're fully loaded and fully stocked up for Daytona. And you can't do that in a very short amount of time. Daytona being an extended period of time, you're going to be down there.
Right. Now,
if it was maybe a normal race weekend, maybe a different story. But being down there a different period of time, because if I'm not mistaken, I think haulers are set to leave out Sunday night, Monday morning.
Okay. And pull into the track sometime on Monday?
Monday afternoon, I think so, they stage.
Okay. Yeah, and it is, you're right. This is kind of one of those odd situations where you're dealing with a very special race. This is the flagship. This, as they like to call it, the Super Bowl of stock car racing. This is the one where sometimes this is the only race that you see for a team for an entire season. Or one of their very few handfuls. Everybody wants to get into the Daytona 500. Everybody wants to win the Daytona 500. We obviously know that. So at this point in time, there are a lot of people out there, and you have heard this just as well as I have, phone calls and social media and all the other stuff that we see. Oh, just load up the cars, take them down to Daytona. Can't do that. This car, set up for Bowman Gray, set up for short track racing, is not suitable to run at Daytona, considering the rules that NASCAR has set.
Change a gear and let somebody go for it.
Just change the gear. Don't worry about the horsepower.
Change a gear. Let it go.
I'd love to see it, but here's the thing. It's not going to happen. I just don't see it. And for all those people that keep saying, hey, we need to take it back to Daytona, I remember the last 2, 3, 4 handful of years of the Clash at Daytona, and I'm sorry, folks, there wasn't anybody in the stands. That's why they moved it. They're going in search of an audience. Granted, they went to Los Angeles, which was not exactly the brightest move in the world, even though, what did they say for the first one? 65, 70,000 people showed up for that first one at the Mausoleum?
I think it was 60.
Okay. Still, that's a heck of a lot better than what happened at Daytona the last number of times that they were there. It certainly, to me, looks a lot better at Bowman Gray, and I understand that Bowman Gray has a lot fewer seats than the Coliseum Mausoleum has, but it looks better. It simply looks better.
Yeah, the optics of it are way better.
Yeah. This is a freak storm. This is a freak weather occurrence. These things happen. You can't change anything. This kind of storm doesn't hit North Carolina but once about every 2-3 decades tops. So stop panicking. Don't worry about it. Let's move on. I hope that they will be able to get this in. I would say if they can't get it in on Wednesday because Mother Nature interferes again, Thursday does look really, really good. Wednesday here in our base of Alabama looks very, very good, and Thursday should be just fine, if cool. But that's what these guys were getting prepared for anyway. The guys from the Motor Racing Network, specifically the Godfather, Dave Moody, he's doing the turn call at that short track where he's really, I think, going to be the only guy in the turns doing those particular turn calls. He was talking about how bundled up he was going to be, but he's ready to go.
Yeah.
So
they do have the wet weather tires prepared and ready. I do know that.
That would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense. All right.
It'll probably, if the rain is not like over ridiculously heavy,
yeah,
I'm sure it'll get ran.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing it get run. Absolutely. So when we get to Daytona, Truck Series has two interesting additions there in that we're going to see Tony Stewart, who hasn't been in a truck in, I want to say 21 years, and Jimmy Johnson, who hasn't been in a truck in close to 20 years. And then from there, the Truck Series is going to head over to St. Petersburg. And an interesting guy that Tricon Garage has pulled in is a guy who is actually quite familiar with racing at St. Petersburg, but not in a truck. And understand when we say this, yeah, we get it. This is the first time that the Truck Series has ever run at St. Petersburg. So therefore, if he's familiar with running at St. Petersburg, must be an IndyCar driver, or in this case, former IndyCar driver, former IndyCar champion, Dario Franchitti, who has not been in a truck in close to 20 years. Noticing a trend here. Suddenly we're going back in time and grabbing people who haven't raced in the Truck Series in a couple of decades, and we're bringing them in to race in the Truck Series in the early part of this year. Dario Franchitti, don't get me wrong, he's a racer's racer, and yes, knowing the St. Petersburg course is certainly a good thing, but you're talking about an IndyCar versus a truck. Shall we once again quote Days of Thunder about width of the tires and weight of the vehicle?
Well, we're going to find out how much this 18-year, 4-month, and 8-day-old gap that he has when it starts is going to do. Personally, I think this right here is just going to set the snowball effect of how many more open-wheel drivers you're going to see step down and cross over.
That does bring up an interesting question then. How many seats are available for something like this?
You're going to, I am, and I'm putting this out there to Chris Ross and Todd Norris right now, and Matt Colling, if you're watching, you would be insanely dumb to not find someone and pull down and cross over in that 25 truck.
Oh, yeah.
Foolish. Because you're sitting there, you now know you've got Dario Franchitti in the race running for Tricon in something that Jimmy Johnson helped strike up.
True.
You got him. You got an open seat in the 25. So there is an opportunity right there. And I could more see someone that's probably from Honda cross over and drive that truck, because you really I don't see anybody from Honda that currently drive the Honda car crossing over and driving a Toyota. I don't see that happening.
No, and it seems less likely that a Chevrolet team driver would be able to go to another quote-unquote American make like Ram.
True. So you got, I could see a Chevrolet driver crossing over and driving a truck for someone, say like Nice,
Sure.
because there's your Chevrolet tie-in right there.
Right.
And I could see somebody stepping and running the Chevrolet for Nice. I could all but bet ThorSport will bring out a fifth truck for there, but it's hard to say who would step over and be let drive it forward. Probably it would be a Honda driver.
It'd almost have to be, I would think.
It'd have to be a Honda. Now, if somebody like Joseph Newgarden or Scott McLaughlin was to drop down, it's kind of tough to say which Chevrolet team they would drive for, unless they were to jump in a McAnally truck or jump in another Nice truck, because I'm sure Nice will come loaded for bear. It's really hard to say, but overall, I think this sets off the snowball effect. You're going to have that wide crossover to where you got IndyCar crossing over and doing a version of the double, where the IndyCar driver going to step back and run a stock car or stock whatever, a fully fendered vehicle, let's say that.
Okay.
Versus somebody stepping up from NASCAR ranks going to run IndyCar.
Yeah, it seems much more likely. And I'm just kind of trying to think of like one of those one-offs that we talked about over the last weekend on the big show, and Henderson Motorsports sticks out in my head. And I get it that, you're not going to take the truck that you ran at Daytona necessarily and put it on the track over at St. Petersburg, because it's very different setup, as you well know.
Connor Daly.
Could Henderson Motorsports do something?
Connor Daly.
Is the team capable of putting the truck out there?
I'm all but certain they can, because if they was putting Parker Kligerman on the track in it last year at road courses, I'm all but certain they could pull the same thing off for Connor Daly.
Okay.
Connor Daly would be the prime candidate for that truck, if you ask me, because you're gonna have an immediate chance to be able to be up front for somebody that knows the road course.
Sure. And here's the thing: there's actually kind of a potential twofer, if you want to put it that way, because not only are the trucks and IndyCar going to be at St. Petersburg, but NASCAR is joining with IndyCar at Phoenix. And I get it, it's not necessarily the trucks in this particular case, unless I'm wrong. I think they could run the O'Reilly Auto Parts series, and I think that there are a few open seats that be available there. Could we see some double crossover activity potentially?
To be quite honest with you, being with Phoenix, that it's IndyCar, O'Reilly Auto Parts, I caught myself before I said it.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And
I'm thinking about it too.
I would not be overly terribly shocked if you seen somebody attempt a triple.
All three races.
And the person that the one that I keep going back to, yes, it may not be a upfront result, but it's an attempt at a triple,
which has never been done before to my knowledge.
I would not be overly shocked if the person that attempts to triple is Catherine Legg.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and it would be, even you want to talk about somebody getting press, even if, and in all likelihood, she's not going to get a great car in either O'Reilly Auto Parts or Cup, especially Cup.
BJ McLeod will put her in the car.
It certainly is newsworthy. It would certainly bring some press to the situation. Number one, sure. Female. Number two, the first person to ever try this kind of a triple. I mean, we've seen triple headers before. Kyle Busch even swept a weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway decade plus ago. So it's not unheard of to do 3 races in a weekend, but it's unheard of to do IndyCar and 2 NASCAR as the triple header. So this would be newsworthy, no doubt about it.
But the next person that comes to mind, and probably considering that there's some form of technical support. Well, we know it's coming from Ford, but there's probably some form of technical support being done by Penske as well. The next one that honestly comes to mind to me is Scott McLaughlin.
Scott would be a very interesting choice. Absolutely.
I wouldn't Scott McLaughlin would be a prime target for me, because Penske has the ability to could put a fourth Cup car on the track.
Absolutely.
They could.
Absolutely they could. Yeah, it wouldn't really surprise me too terrifically much. Plus, I think to a certain extent, there was a rivalry of sorts between Scott McLaughlin and SVG down under when they were both running Australian supercars. I think he'd probably enjoy the opportunity to kind of revisit that rivalry, even if just for one race or two races, as the case may be. I can't remember whether SVG slated to run the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Phoenix or not. Could be an interesting move, though.
I'm not sure.
Could be an interesting move.
But I'm trying to. Here we go. Come on. Well,
we don't have all the entries on that one anyway, do we?
Considering, with the 88 car, Byron's set to run it at Phoenix in the O'Reilly Auto Parts race.
Okay. So still, potentially they could match up in the Cup Series.
Well, yeah, they could.
Okay.
They absolutely could.
It could be real interesting. Nice little underlying storyline.
I could see something like that happening.
Okay. I do find it interesting. And this all leads up to what I'm really hoping for, is that we see more of these kind of weekends where we can go and not just see a full NASCAR set, which is great, but also get IndyCar involved in it, or have a weekend where one of the NASCAR series, it doesn't matter which one of the top three, joins IndyCar like they're doing at St. Petersburg. I think it's a great thing. And I truth be told, I'd love to see a lot more of it throughout the course of any given season, not just this one, but any given season.
Yeah. I mean, it's the ones that come to mind that I could see doing within the first few races at either St. Petersburg or Phoenix would be Connor Daly. I could see somebody like possibly Alexander Rossi stepping down and driving a Nice truck.
Yeah, I could see that.
Chevrolet, with a Chevrolet tie.
I mentioned Nice Motorsports. That's
Nice Motorsports. I mean, Penske could strike up a deal with Nice and put one of theirs in the truck, whether it be David Malukas, Newgarden, or McLaughlin.
I think Newgarden would love to be able to do it if he could find the right opportunity to do it.
I'm sure he would. Phoenix, Catherine Legg, Scott McLaughlin. I could see Connor Daly stepping up and doing a one-day double. Running an Xfinity car for somebody and running the IndyCar race.
Yeah, I imagine
depending on how Junkos Hollinger stuff does.
Yeah, well, and I think that there's more than one, quasi open seat. In other words, a star car out there that would say, "Hey, yeah, we could put Connor Daly in there." Wouldn't have any problem with it.
I could, considering that he's teased it before and he's talked about something wanting to do it one day. I could see somebody like Graham Rahal trying it.
Yeah, I could see that too. It'd be very interesting. And again, the further you drop down to O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, you drop down to the Craftsman Truck Series, you see a bit more of an opportunity because they do have the star cars that are there that we don't see, obviously, in the Cup Series because of the sponsorship obligations and everything, that they're going to want a regular driver in that car if they can get one. So
now Tricon does have another truck with a 5. So who's to say they won't pull somebody and have a double crossover? Who knows?
Could be. It'd be fun to watch. We'll see what happens. One other note here, we didn't get a picture on this because really you noted this just before we started to record this podcast, in the fact that when we talked on the big show, it wasn't confirmed. Let's put it that way. But everything seemed to be pointing to the fact that we were going to get rid of the Roval and go back to racing on the Charlotte Oval in the latter part of the year. And that brings us back to that conversation. It's not an argument by any stretch, because you and I are in both perfect agreement that the racing for this particular generation of car, its strength is the 1.5 mile tracks, the Homestead Miamis, the Charlottes, the Texases, the Vegases, the Kansas. It's why we're going back to Chicagoland. We made that argument. And we said it makes sense for them to drop the Roval, which you and I have never really been sold on, and to go back to the Oval. You got confirmation that is actually the case?
Yeah, on the first episode of the Dale Jr. Download that was recorded today, that was already been released, Marcus Smith was on there, and it got confirmed by Marcus Smith that the Bank of America 400 is going to be on the Oval this fall.
Yep. And we can drop the Bank of America Roval 400 and just call it the Bank of America 400. And congratulations, Marcus.
The only one downfall that I don't like about it is they're going to have it as a day race on Sunday.
Yeah, should have been a night race. That would have been a great opportunity. But at the same point in time, if they time it right, and if they're smart, NBC will go, oh, you switched it. Let's grab that as another race, and let's put that on NBC, which would mean that you get just one more, because they were only supposed to run 4 out of the 14 races that they have at the latter part of the year. They were only supposed to run 4 on the main network. NBC, run a 5th. Do everybody a favor, run a 5th, and make it the Charlotte race. For the love. If only I were able to be in charge of programming. Call me. All right. One final note here, since we won't have the opportunity to actually mention this weekend, and again, we'll explain that here in a couple of moments, what exactly Matt and I are doing. I had to write down this whole thing, so I've got my little cheat sheet here of the National Hot Rod Association. Again, they're celebrating their 75th anniversary this year. And just like they did the 50th anniversary, just like NASCAR did the 50th anniversary, they came up with a list of the 50 greatest drivers for the first 50 years. And then they got to the 75th anniversary. NASCAR expanded it out, kept the original 50, added 25 to it. That's exactly what the NHRA is doing. They took the original 50 and they're adding 25 names to it. The 5 that were released just as of yesterday, very, very deserving group. And I love the last 2 that I'm going to do this as they announced them both on the same week. First up, though, is Steve Torrence. You can't argue Steve Torrence. Just a quick rundown of his resume. 60 national event wins, 97 final rounds. So in 97 final rounds, he's won it 60 times. That's a slightly better than 6 in 10 rate. And he's got 4 championships in Top Fuel, and they all came consecutively. Can't argue his resume in any way.
Nope.
Second up, Larry Dixon. Larry Dixon was the 1995 Rookie of the Year, got 62 event wins, 3 titles, and is a member of the Motorsports Hall of Fame class of 2021. Can't argue that one.
No, it's legitimate.
Del Worsham, 1991 Rookie of the Year, 1992 ran IHRA Funny Car, NHRA Funny Car, and NHRA Top Fuel, but didn't win his first title until 2011 when he got his Top Fuel championship, backed it up by going back to Funny Car, and in 2015 won a Funny Car championship. He's got 8 NHRA Top Fuel national event wins, 25 NHRA national Funny Car event wins, and that's not including his IHRA resume. But then again, let's face it, the NHRA is talking about their best drivers. They couldn't care less about the IHRA records. But still, even if you throw all that out, Del Worsham, very, very worthy. And that brings us to the brothers. They're putting in on this boat, the same class, both Cruz and Tony Pedregon. How do they both get in? Well, Cruz Pedregon is a two-time funny car champion. He has got 40 funny car national event wins. His brother Tony Pedregon has 43 national event wins, and he himself is a two-time funny car champion. No arguments on any one of those five at all.
No.
So congratulations to those five.
They all have sufficient credentials to make it for me.
Yeah, I agree 100% wholeheartedly. Looking forward to them getting into their 75th anniversary, number one. And number two, really looking forward to this because we saw a little bit of crossover last year, a couple of drivers doing a little bit of IHRA stuff and a little bit of NHRA stuff. You and I tend to think probably we'll see more as the scheduling allows because neither one of those series is running every single week. So it's very, very feasible that we could see some crossover from drivers that are regulars in the IHRA trying to get some NHRA stuff in, and certainly some NHRA guys trying to jump over to the IHRA and do the same thing.
That is true. When you look at it, when NHRA is in South Georgia, May 1st through the 3rd. The following weekend is when IHRA is in Montgomery.
Not too far of a drive at all.
Because the NHRA would be en route because their next event following the Southern Nationals is Route 66 in Joliet on May 14th through 17th. So that's the path up 65.
There's a nice little gap in there too. So that could work.
I won't be with how IHRA is paying out and how the pay scale and pay structure is.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be overly totally shocked if somebody like, I don't know, like Sean Reed or Spencer Massey or
sure,
I don't know, if somebody like that shows up.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. We'll keep an ear out, and if we hear anything, we'll be, of course, letting you know about it. But just not this weekend. Again, this is a situation where we were going to try this a week and a half ago, really, now, and it just didn't work out because of that weather. And the weather situation, again, that affected the Clash was something that they dealt with the weekend before up in Charlotte. And it pushed back the National Motorsports Press Association's annual conference, which they had moved off of the Super Bowl weekend because that's what we all decided on. And then when the weather got into the way, they put it back on Super Bowl weekend. Oh, well. So that's where we're going to be. We've got a couple of things that we need to talk about, including, let's just say, certain members of the press having a harder time getting credentials than they should. We'll leave it at that. I could say more, but I'm not gonna. So yeah, we're gonna do that and get involved in that. And when we come back, we will hopefully be celebrating, both Matt and I. And number two, we're going to be ready not only for a full week because we're going to get right back into the podcasts, number one, and number two, we'll be ready for the next big show, which will happen on Daytona 500 weekend. And we know that we had a lot of news that got built up in the weekend that we had off last weekend because of Matt having a bit of a throat problem with some laryngitis. So I fully expect that we're probably going to be in much the same position again, where we're going to have a whole lot of news to try to pack into a 2-hour window on Daytona 500 weekend. Hope you join us then. Our thanks to producer John. Our thanks to producer Molly. We want you to please subscribe right down there and feel free to comment as you will. And we will be back with you 1 week from today as we record the next edition of Crossed Flags. Again, on our way to the National Motorsports Press Association's conference coming up Saturday morning, during which we normally would be on the air. Can't make John do all that kind of stuff. And truth be told, we don't want him to have to do all that stuff and have one of us, Matt, who has volunteered to drive, to try to concentrate on driving and also commenting. So it's just the best that we go ahead and take the weekend off. We'll talk to you again next week with Crossed Flags. And don't forget, big show coming up, Daytona 500 weekend. Thanks again to everybody involved and to you for checking us out right here on Crossed Flags.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.